Yes, sir.
Hey, Glenn.
Oh, what's happening?
It's me. I'm just getting ready to go to sleep in a little bit because I got to wake up, make deliveries.
Yeah.
I got a new job. I just started, I guess basically I started last week. I deliver nuts in supermarkets. It's not that bad. I get to travel, and I'm not stuck in one place all the time. So
Do you pick up the nuts and put them in your pocket and deliver that?
no, it's the nuts that you can't put in your pocket are the ones at the warehouse. They have like a little rack, whatever nuts you want. But I'm not. I can't live off. I don't work for peanuts. I'm not trying to work for peanuts.
Chicken feed.
Yeah. So I'll be able to donate some money because I have a job now and they haven't fired me. So Jenny said something. I guess she's not doing that PayPal thing. You know, she has.
No.
So I don't know how that's working. I guess I could send money through you. I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you have other people out there. I don't know if anybody has bought the newspaper recently, because I've told a couple people about it.
I haven't heard of anybody in a long time.
Right now, I'm talking to a guy, and I made contact with him a couple of times. A guy from India, and he's been interested in your material. He's always asking questions. Yeah.
I haven't heard of him.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. He's maybe a lot of people I find they get like really, when it comes to talking to you, they get really shy. It might be shy, and they feel like they'd rather talk to me. I don't know why. I tell them, yeah, you're probably better at answering these questions. I don't know. I guess they get intimidated by you. But it's hard for people to reach you, I guess. You know, over the years, it's hard for people to reach you. Because of situation. I don't know. I forget exactly where we left off. I think you would.
Replacing bureaucrats, I think.
Yeah, it was about bureaucrats.
400,000, 500,000 killed on the spot in Syria.
Killed on the spot, like at one time?
And by cannon fire.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Artillery. Can you imagine Barack Obama ordering the military to go, say, bomb Dallas or bomb Detroit?
His public image is so, like, it's so clean. Like they see when because that's the thing with I was talking about that with Dana. There's a new thing about with this social media. It's a new advanced version of what the media used to be, because now they have people more integrated into this media stew, whatever you want to call it, and people are fooled thinking that like they're doing their own thinking, or they don't realize they don't know who's on the other side of that computer screen. They don't realize that. They don't realize that the social media was just an excuse for like the news media people to hide behind.
Yeah.
There's like so many undercover media people, and
Disappeared again.
yeah, this is I have a feeling that I'm going to be dealing with that a lot.
Yeah. I've been dealing with it since 1980. 1986, the minute I said, what the hell's going on in the world?
You're like, you know what? You just woke up one day and said, I don't want the cheese. I just want out the maze. You can keep the cheese. I just want out this maze here.
Yeah. Well, they've been harassing and covering up by hanging up the phone ever since I first said, now, what is really going on in the world? Why do these things appear to be untrue? After all, they taught them to me in school. In any event, social media covers up and does the things that open media can't do.
Exactly. It's clever, you know. It's very clever. It's all undercover. It's whenever I see like they're able to get an idea across so much more efficiently.
You don't like that word, Syria.
Oh my goodness, man! These guys
Don't like the thought that 12 tribes were fabricated with the help of Egyptians in a place that uses media's name, Alem.
Maybe it has to do with your new cabinet, the new cabinet you guys have.
Well, I don't know what the new ones are like. All I know is that the old ones from the same party have been given control of citizenship and immigration and border guards. So there's a couple of old names in the new party that are just carrying on the same type of bull.
Have you noticed? Have you been watching the politics in the U.S.?
Yeah.
They basically set up this guy, Bernie Sanders, and they kind of put him against Hillary.
Yeah.
And I guess from how I see it, Trump is like the villain. He's the guy who gets all the attention and openly says things that he knows people will react to. And Bernie's supposed to be like the savior. And I don't like the way how his name sounds, because there's a slogan that people use. They say "Feel the burn." And when I think about it, Bernie Sanders, burning sand, I can only think of Blackwater, and when the coal gets burnt. That's like the idea, the image that comes to my mind. And then
sand is DNA. genetically engineered for the task.
Yeah, they showed him. I saw pictures of him. They showed pictures of him in the background with Martin Luther King. He was involved in, I guess, some way with Martin Luther King. I don't know. Martin Luther King, you know, it's like the guy was trained in like leftist ideology and philosophy, and I see that with like the Black Panthers, right? Like with the halftime Super Bowl show, there's a big singer, Beyonce, she did something with the Black Panthers, and you know the media is making a big thing about it. And I think about the Black Panthers, they were trained in that same thinking, that same leftist type of thinking, and it makes me wonder why they call themselves Panthers after the cats. You know, why would they call their organization that? What influence did they have in all of this? I don't know. Watch it on. It's funny in the Rose. You still there?
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny in the Rose Bowl parade. They had they showed Panthers too, and they showed Buffalo soldiers, the black.
Well, remember what I told you last time or the time before. There is the history of the world and the development of human thinking written as a logo by the Royal Bank of Canada. And Royal Bank of Canada have on their logo a set of 3 letters, RBC. And then there's a picture of a cat, big cat, lion, which is the model of a panther. Now, the story is that number 2 is number 1. Just like seconds are the first thing spoken about in time on a clock. Seconds, why not first? Because the first is a secret. So if you imagine that there's a cave, and in that cave, number 2 appears to be number 1, and that's a rat. What happened to number 1? Well, before a rat, there was an ant. And all the ants gather up all of the information and take it where? Underground. Just like the Moho discontinuity provides place for the first males and first females who started gathering information, and they ended up taking it underground. Neanderthals and Amazons. So the ants are the representative of number 1. They gather and hide. That's like monasteries. Gather information and hide. Then you have the rats. The rats are the original explorers. They go everywhere, just like the Portuguese. Portuguese were the sailors who went South America, China, India, all over the place, in Antarctica. Portuguese. That means, if you divide the word into its component parts, the door to the geese. Well, the geese is Canada. The north. The gateway to the north. And then there are some places they can't go in a cave because there's a river that's too wide or a lake that's too wide and deep that they can't get across. So they grew wings and they became the bee, RB. Rats become bats. And what do bats do? Bats hit a ball past the defense set up to prevent them running, and over the fence is a homer run. Home run. Homer bats the home run. Why is it that as soon as people go to university, they are taught Greek? Because the two most famous books of Homer describe the past and the present. And they get over the obstacles. Well, in the old days, the obstacles were the oceans. And by putting up sails on ships, they got to travel where the rats could not go on their own until they could get a ride on a boat. And then, once the cave has been explored, you need a version of the animal that goes outside and comes back in. And that's a cat. The cat spends its nights outside and its days sleeping inside the safety provided by the cave. And the biggest cat, tigers, lions, panthers, black panthers, mountain lions, they're the biggest cats. So they gather up their food and they bring it back into the cave. They eat. Just like bears carry their winter season in a deep sleep in the safety of a cave. And when you're looking at a big cat and a bear, which one looks more like Ursa Major, long tail.
Yeah.
So, although they were cats and they were going into caves, people could have mistaken them for bears, and that may be how Ursa Major got its name, as a bear. Bear with a long tail would have been a mountain lion, a panther, her in pants. Now, the question is, if you have a world with ants, rats, bats, cats, and mountain lions, and no human beings, how does a human being survive? First of all, how does it get made? Well, we know that the periodic table, the elements that make up all chemistry, can be found all over the world in different quantities. That material came from outer space. And as asteroids hit the Earth, they deposited some of these elements. Everything that's alive is a combination of these elements, a different recipe. So what happens? Every now and then, through a basic rule of time, the right combination of elements gathers together in the right place under the right circumstances and ends up in water, pond, and out of that, by chance, called evolution, the right parts, the right elements come together in the right quantities to create life in the form of a human. Maybe 1 in a million years. Maybe a million in a billion years. Different parts of the world. So, at one stage of the game, a human baby is created. The first ones were hermaphroditic, combo of male and female in one body. But they all died on the shore of whatever puddle of water they came out of, because they were no longer being fed. They all died, that is, until by chance a cat, such as a panther or a tiger or a mountain lion, jaguar, whatever you want to call them, having given birth and lost their baby, for whatever reason did not survive, this cat is going around looking for its baby and comes across a human child. Picks it up, as cats always do, and takes it home in order to nurse it. So in the cave goes the mountain lion with the baby, and the baby survives long enough feeding off the cat. So in fact, cats were the first ones to have interaction with humans and brought them into their homes. That's the story written as Tarzan. An animal takes a child home, feeds it until it's able to take care of itself. You remember the movies about Tarzan. Its protector, while it was living with a chimpanzee, were the lions. So the history of humanity is written as a secret A at the beginning. Ants. The color is tan. The number is 10. So it's a journey from A to 10. 1 to 10. And A being number 1. Followed by rats, such as bureaucrats. Followed by bats, such as Homer, education, the Iliad. Followed by cats, such as the Portuguese, leaving home, ending up creating BC, Brazil cats. Where do Brazil cats live? In the Andes. And they take the high road to Peru. Peru, the French word for road is, or street, is rue, R-U-E. Père, father, sat her, a pregnant mother makes duplicates of herself. Clones. Until at one time, the male clones meet the female clones who can't produce, for whatever reason, an offspring by themselves, but discover that through copulation they can make genders. that are no longer clones, no longer attached to the same root, but can wander about on their own and make choices on their own. They are no longer attached to a tribe, but can intermarry with other tribes. And they can change their genetic makeup. And one day, in the Andes and in the Himalayas and in the mountains all over the world, avalanches occur. And a number of people are instantly frozen and quote unquote die. And later, whether it be months, years, or centuries, or millennia, these frozen people are discovered by people who just happen to be walking by. And if they find a location where thousands of people were covered up in a village at the base of a mountain by an avalanche, they have thousands of samples on which to experiment, bringing them back to life. And of course, the first thing would be to melt them, only to discover that as soon as you melt them, they fade away as any dead person would. So the experiment becomes what process can be used to extract the life force that exists within the entanglement of a genome without knowing any of those words. They experiment with the thousands of bodies that they have which were frozen in an avalanche. And eventually they start to grasp the concept. You have to do it slowly. You have to do it in a container with a watery substance. And you have to have in there the mix of fertilizer equal to semen. So they take cauldrons into the caves, fill them up with water, add sap from a tree in a mountainous area. They would normally be pine trees. The word pine is linked to spine. And they do it quickly down to as slow as possible. And they discover that over a period of time, the existing body disappears, leaving behind the making of a new one, who, much like the firstborn, the elements are present to make a new body. The conditions are right, and out of the cauldron comes a baby. Genetic engineering was born. Now the baby has to be given to a nurturer. And of course, they don't want to admit that they're manufacturing these children. They say they must have been born by normal means by a parent who couldn't take care of them. So they called them foundlings, from the word foundation, knowing full well that these were genetically engineered children. As the children grow into full-size adults, there's one thing that they learn about these foundlings, and that's the fact that they carry a personality that separates one from the other, and that they can change the personality by changing the sap which they have added into the water in the cauldron where the child was made out of an other person. They find that the person has traits. It has the ability to do some things differently from others. And they start to realize that the trade, if you want to call it that, the approach to work that was the original person who died in the avalanche can be passed on to the child. However, the personality can be changed by the type of sap used. Most fir trees provide a sap that is pretty nasty in its taste, and they go around looking for different trees. Date trees in the Middle East would be one place where they would end up saying the personality of the people extracted from DNA out of a dead person seems to be less cantankerous. The sweeter the sap is. And they begin a search for sap that has a high level of sugar. because a nice personality is much easier to control than a barbaric personality of the ones made from fir trees. And every sap of every kind of tree is taken into the laboratory for experiments. And the elm tree seems to be one that they settled on. However, it did show certain weaknesses that could, in fact, be improved with the sap of an oak tree or a chestnut tree. However, the sweetest sap of all was discovered in a maple tree. M-A for ma, A-P for paw. They had tried apple and sent Johnny Appleseed the story to America. Make a lot of apple trees and make sure everybody gets a Bible and they'll follow the rules. L-E at the end just means the in French, le. Apple, maple. What's the difference? The maple has an M, which is the symbol for breast. One less P. No penis. So the apple becomes the maple. And the maple tree sap running into water makes it the sweetest tasting water of all water, which is potable. The area of the Great Lakes has the most amount of apple trees. Especially Quebec and Ontario. But a lot as well along the shores of the St. Lawrence and Lake Ontario. So now they've discovered how to make children, how to change their personality through genetic engineering prior to birth, serving as amniotic fluid replacement. And then they teach the child using the Bible as the book of rules, all copied and modified from the books of Enoch. That first appeared 600 years after Adam and Eve in the book. But of course, some of the books of Enoch are secret because they teach genetic engineering and tell the reason why genetic engineering is preferable to copulation. Because everything can be pre-planned for the person who will be made. And the planning can serve a program, a purpose, long term. And since there is not one thing that needs to be done, you need to make pools, gene pools. So that they have multiple approaches to solving the single problem, such as is the UN, as opposed to federal governments. All led by bureaucrats. But if you're going to make a pool, its purpose is to get from one place to the other in the big overall plan, and no one personality or multiple of personalities can carry the big plan from beginning to end without being spotted. So they have to be given a lifespan that is shorter than the time it takes to gain the knowledge of how they were really made. And yet they know that as they tweak the information, eventually some people will be made who will put 2 and 2 together and come up with 5 instead of 4. 5th dimension instead of 4 dimension. And therefore, when that time occurs, which will probably be a period of 8,000 years, you got to kill them en masse. So you got to have war. We have war in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. You have to have pestilence. You have Ebola. And now mosquitoes from Brazil. Pestilence. Mosquitoes. Famine in refugee camps. Disease. Small heads. There are 2 heads on a male. Prevent the small head from acting, and no more reproduction will come from that person. And eventually create the conditions for mass execution. The Lou at the Sioux. Of course, you need a calendar of events to tell those in the know where you're at. One event which is about to occur is the separation of the stars that make up the Big Dipper. Most of the stars there, 7 of which are clearer than others, are parts of constellations rather than single stars. While one is a dual star. They all have come together by the same chance that human beings come together, although they are all separate, such as elements are on Earth. And 6 of the stars you see are part and parcels of constellations that move in the same direction, while 2 stars are separate and are about to move out of the major center of activity that forms Ursa Major, therefore creating a hole in the base of Ursa Major, from which a leak begins to appear as a pinhole, invisible to most people, but as with any leak, over time will expand the hole and all of a sudden create a flood. Something has to generate the power of a wave. Such as you find being talked about these days, gravitational waves out in space when 2 black holes come together and merge, and the shock wave made even pushes back gravity. Well, here we have a situation where the shock made will push back water from Lake of the Woods so that it will merge with Lake Superior. Whose northern peninsula, Michigan, holds back the water. But a leak has begun. And as the water from Lake of the Woods enters Lake Superior, an explosion by Superior propane at the western end in the bottom of the bay called Thunder or Under. Thunder Bay would create a hole in the bottom of the bay, but also simultaneously in the roof of caves that have been mined for thousands of years, and the water would tumble into the caves and fill it up until there is no more space, and it bounces out, creating what is known as an inland tsunami, which travels at 400 or 500 miles an hour, the speed of a jet airplane, along the bottom of Lake Superior, which is 1,200 feet under the surface, until it hits the Michigan Peninsula, where the leak has become a torrent and knocks the entire peninsula over. At a height of at least 40 feet, but could be even much deeper. And all of the water from Lake of the Woods, which now allows water coming from western sources to go straight through the Lake Superior rather than turn down the Missouri or Mississippi rivers, is added to that of the Great Lakes. It overwhelms Lake Michigan and the Michigan Southern Peninsula, overwhelms Georgian Bay as it goes down the areas at Sault Ste. Marie that has the locks and dump into Gore Bay, goes on land on the other side in a place called Midland, and heads for Aurelia and Barrie at Lake Simcoe. Aurelia is where the Ontario Provincial Police have set up their headquarters, address 777. On the southern side, it floods Chicago off of Lake Michigan. And everybody runs south, not knowing that a whole canal structure from a place called Ottawa, not the capital of Canada, but a city in Illinois, carries water to the Chicago diversion at the southern end of Chicago, where water normally now flows to the Mississippi at St. Louis. So as they run away from one flood, they're running towards another flood, getting caught in between takes out millions of people. Same happens to Detroit. Same thing happens to Cleveland and Toledo in Ohio. As the water runs on land in both Canada and the United States, it takes out major population centers located in Toronto, Hamilton, London, Kitchener, Waterloo. That's
where Brian lives.
Mm-hmm. down through the Trent Canal system from Lake Simcoe down to Peterborough and out around Trenton just before Kingston. The water runs into Lake Ontario. On the south side, it overwhelms the land and falls from what is Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, overwhelms Lake Erie, and falls over Niagara Falls into Lake Ontario, where there's already a surplus amount of water that fills the gap opening to the St. Lawrence Seaway, and the water has no choice but to turn down on land to Fort Drum, Watertown, until it gets around the area of the St. Lawrence Seaway and runs on land behind Ogdensburg, leaving Ogdensburg as kind of an island off the coast of the Seaway, which is jam-packed with water, and turns back down to Messina before it can re-enter the St. Lawrence at the end of the Seaway. Floods Montreal to the level of Pine Street. The main street below Pine Street, since Montreal is an island with a mountain on it called Mount Royal, the base of the mountain, or the lowest part of the mountain, is called Pine Street. Just before you get to Pine Street, it's called Sherbrooke. A brook is also water. That means the entire lower part of Montreal Island, which includes residential areas surrounding the financial and business hub of Montreal, is covered in water. Dorchester Boulevard, St. James Street is the financial district below. Beaver Hall Hill is the street that runs up the mountain from the lower parts of the financial district, suggesting dams in water and ponds. Bell Canada has their head office on Beaver Hall Hill, 1051 Beaver Hall Hill. They have used the site that used to belong to me in Gatineau, called Quebec, stealing it from me by a conspiracy with Brian Mulrooney's prime ministerial office. Bribes were paid. My two partners to turn over the land that we had assembled for the creation of Mycot. my conceptual, intelligent building, $145 to $165 million project. And by handing the land over to Bell Canada, my assets were diminished by $21 million. Potential assets dependent upon the opening of the Mycot project that I had assembled the land for. Water flows up the Ottawa River, and the place the project was to be built is Gatineau. Gate in water. Gats in O-E-A-U, water in French. It is the home of all of the archives of Bell Canada. It is to be part of creation's revenge on the people who plan the destruction of Canada, is that all of them, border guards and police, will be the first to die in their own attempted mass suicide, mass murder, gene pool destruction.
Yeah. Hello?
A genocide inflicted upon Canada